BronxNet has been an incredible community partner for events like this and forums like these. And they're just an incredible resource we have here in the Bronx. And of course, a very special thank you to my chief of staff, Jenna. You may have heard her voice in the background. Just so everyone watching knows, it takes a lot of work to organize events like these, to coordinate with the commission, with BronxNet, with the community, and of course, all of the technology. So thank you to Jenna, my chief of staff. I also want to recognize, I see it in the participants, I want to recognize our state committeeman, Michael Heller, is in the participants list. We have numerous members of the community board and other community organizations. So thank you for joining us. I hope that you bring this information back to your respective groups and share the information. We're going to be doing one more Bronx-wide information session, so stay tuned to that. I put it in the chat, but the best way to follow up on the news and what's going on in the community is my newsletter, ericdinowitz.nyc/newsletter, and following me on social media. It's Eric Dinowitz NYC. So tonight you're going to learn about what the redistricting process entails, why it happens, how it affects us, and really importantly, how you can influence the process. And then, of course, we'll have opportunity to ask questions about anything that's not covered in the presentation. I want to remind you, and I'm sure Miranda will remind you, that the commission is holding public hearings where you can go and testify. And you can also submit written testimony, which will be posted on their website. The public hearings start August 16th. They run through August 22nd before the commission draws a revised version of their draft maps. Here in the Bronx, August 17th at Lehman College from 5:30 to 9 is the Bronx public hearing. August 17th, Lehman College, 5:30 to 9. If you have questions throughout the presentation, there's a Q&A function. If you're on Zoom, there's a Q&A function that you can use to type in your question. Again, I encourage all of you, go to ericdinowitz.nyc/newsletter to find out about more events like this. I'll be writing about the new maps redistricting. Without further ado, I will leave it with you, Miranda.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Councilmember. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. As the Councilmember mentioned, I am no stranger to District 11. It is where I was born and raised. So this is a fun full circle moment for me. And I'm really excited to be sharing this news with you and, explaining my favorite thing, which is redistricting, if you can believe it. So if I can share my screen. Cool. Okay. Give me 1 second. Sorry, everyone. Start. There we go. All right. So can everyone see my screen? Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, great. So like I said, this is going to be kind of a 101 about New York City Council redistricting. I'll explain the process, the laws that are governing the commission, how we work, and how you can participate once this is done. So without further ado, okay, great. So a little bit about, why this is all happening right now, right? So I'm sure a lot of you on this call and a lot of community members, community board members were involved in the census. So the Constitution requires a census of the population every 10 years. The census is actually quite literally a count, right? It's to check in with the country, right? It's to see where things are going, where things are heading, where population is growing, where population is shrinking. And, that's done for a lot of reasons, right? It's to see where new hospitals need to be built, where new supermarkets need to be built, where new schools need to be built, but also, redistricting, right? And so that obviously just happened with the state legislative and congressional lines. So state legislative and congressional redistricting happens in years ending in 1 because elections for those positions begin again in the years ending in 2. The city council redistricting will happen in the year ending in 2 for elections happening in the year ending in 3. And, part of the purpose of redistricting is to make districts more equal. It's to adjust for population, whether that be a new community that has exploded in growth, whether that be a community that might have left a certain locale. It's to really get closer to that one person, one vote doctrine. So a little bit about the New York City Districting Commission. In New York City, the city charter assigns the task of drawing these 51 new city council maps to the districting commission. There's 15 members, 7 of them are appointed by the mayor and 8 are appointed by the city council. Of those 8, 5 are appointed by the council majority leader and 3 by the council minority leader. The city charter does set forth criteria for choosing these commission members beyond who the appointing figures are, such as the borough, party, minority status, and diversity. The intent is to have this body reflect the vast diversity of our city to really ensure that everyone's voices are heard in this process. So this is a little bit about the commissioners and our senior staff. The bios of our commissioners are on our website. I would be here until this time tomorrow if I spent, if I did them justice by going through their biographies. But it's been a real pleasure and honor to work with them because they really bring such an incredible, diversity and wide breadth of expertise, knowledge, understanding of New York City, right? Where it's a huge city. I'll talk a bit more about the population, but it's a huge city with a lot of different communities. And it's really fascinating to watch all of their expertise kind of commingle and bounce off each other to get closer and closer to, what we hope is the most representative map of New York City. So a little bit about why this matters. In 2010, the New York City census count was 8.2 million people. And in 2020, that was 8.8 million, right? So we're talking about 630,000 people that are new to the city. For context, that's about the size of Detroit, right? So we're talking about if the entire city of Detroit came to New York City, and if we didn't change things, it wouldn't really be fair, right? Then you would be pretty far away from that one person, one vote. So the idea of what we're doing here is to make, to kind of retrofit, if you will, this new population with our lines, right? And to make everything fit and be more accurate. So with 51 city council districts and a population of 8.8 million, 8.8 million divided by 51 is about 172,882 residents each. So that is the ideal average district size. Not every district will be exactly that, but that's the number that we're working towards. And I'll talk a little bit more about the statistical guidelines that we're following throughout. So a little bit more about, why does this matter and why is the city council so important? So I'm sure many of you know the city council is a co-equal branch of local government along with the mayor. The last budget that was passed by the city council in June was $101 billion. 101 billion, right? And not million. And I say it twice because that's a huge amount. That's bigger than most states. And, beyond that budgetary power, we're talking about community safety, parks, sanitation, agency oversight, new legislation, community board appointments, and the list goes on, right? And so the city council has an enormous amount of power in our city, which is already an enormously powerful city, right? So we really, that's why we're here to explain this process and to get input into the process because, we take it seriously how important it is to have good representation that accurately reflects you and your community at the city council level. So a little bit about that population growth that I mentioned, right? So we said it grew by 630,000 people. Within that 630,000 people, the Hispanic population grew by just over 150,000 people. The Asian population grew by just under 350,000 people. The city's Black population shrunk by 84,000 people and the white population by 3,000. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the legislation that is guiding the commissioners as they get to work with drawing these maps. So we'll take it to the federal level first, and that would be the Voting Rights Act of 1965. The Voting Rights Act, does talk about drawing districts and what is possible. And it explicitly prohibits a new district map from denying or diluting the voting power of racial and language minorities. So, that's kind of overarching. That's something that everyone in our country, is bound by when drawing new districts of any kind. A little bit about state law. So in 2021, Governor Hochul signed a law into place that says that no district, all districts drawn within New York State must be within a 5% deviation of each other. And what that means is for any map, whether it's state, town, village, city, the smallest and largest districts within that map must be no more than 5% from that average ideal population, right? So we're talking about what's the wiggle room here? And, part of the reason this is so important and that we're really trying to educate people is that this law is new, right? It was signed into law the fall of 2021. So the New York State Districting Commission has existed before. This is not her first go around. And so in the past, any two districts could be 10% away from each other, right? So the last time this commission was convened in 2012 and 2013, the average district size was close to 160,000. And what that meant is when the map was said and done, any two districts could be 10% away from each other, meaning 16,000 people. Right. So we're talking about two districts that literally you could cross the street and go back and forth between them. And we're talking about 16,000 people more in one district, right? That's 16,000 more mouths to feed. That's 16,000 more people using the resources, 16,000 more people using a park, using a school, using a swimming pool, right? And so in the spirit of one person, one vote, that's not really equal representation when you have such a wide deviation. But narrowing that deviation window really ensures that districts are closer in size, which means that all New Yorkers are more equitably represented. So a little bit about the city criteria that the commission is bound by. So within the city charter, beyond this 5% deviation, the state has set forth, and beyond the BRA, which the federal government has set forth, the charter does require the commission to do these things while drawing these new districts. And I just want to note that these districts are listed in priority order, right? So if not an accident, they are listed in descending priority order. So first is to keep neighborhoods and communities intact. The second is to keep the districts compact. The third is to limit crossover districts. The fourth is to avoid splitting voters of the same political party, i.e. gerrymandering. And number 5 is to avoid oddly shaped districts. And I will talk a little bit more about this criteria on the next slide. And so something else that falls within this criteria is contiguous districts or contiguity, right? So what this really means is that you must be able to travel from one end of the district to the other without leaving the district. You can't have one corner of the district in the Northwest Bronx and the other corner in the Southeast Bronx if there was no way to get between the two of them. So you must be able to travel within a district. And what that means also is if a district is separated by water, there must be a connection via a bridge or a tunnel or regular ferry service. So a private boat, for example, would not count as making a district contiguous. It would have to be accessible, by all New Yorkers. And the second is a limit on crossover districts. And so I just want to be clear, the city charter does not say that there should be no crossover districts. It says that crossover districts should be limited to the maximum extent practicable. And when we say crossover districts, we mean a district that crosses county lines or borough lines, right? So as it currently stands, we have a District 8, right, that goes from the South Bronx to Manhattan. We have District 34 that crosses between Queens and Brooklyn, and we have District 22 that crosses from Queens to Rikers Island, which is legally part of the Bronx, right? And so when we say limit on crossover districts, they should be limited overall to the maximum extent practicable. But the hard and fast rule is also that no two districts may cross between the same two boroughs, right? So given that they're in the 2012-213 map that is currently in place, no other district could cross between the South Bronx or between the Bronx, my apologies, and Manhattan, right? Because District 8 currently does that. So no other district in that iteration of the map would be allowed to go through. So a little bit about why I'm really here. The part of the reason that it's so important for us to, work with communities to explain the redistricting process is that we really want to get public input into the process. I'm not just paying lip service when I say the commission really is dedicated to incorporating this input into the process, right? So far we've talked about the laws that govern the commission, and we talked about, the data that governs the commission. And then the third piece of that triangle really is the public input. And it helps kind of, bring those other two things to life, right? I mean, the census is a very comprehensive file, but it's a data file. It's a spreadsheet essentially, right? And so we need the input of all New Yorkers to kind of help us let that data tell a real story, right? Kind of help us connect the data points and make that data come alive, because everyone on this call, you're all experts on your own communities in a way that, as experienced and as knowledgeable as the 15 commissioners are, it's a city of 8.8 million people, right? And so the more people that the commission hears from, the better these maps will be, the more reflective of the realities of all New Yorkers, and the more, accurate the districts will reflect who wants to be voting together, right? We're talking about, who apply for budgetary funding with, who you might participate in participatory budgeting with, who, who you elect a candidate with, right? And so we're really talking about trying to understand the best ways that communities want to be kept together and who they want to be able to sort of join forces with. So the ways that the public can participate is, as the council member mentioned, we are having another round of public hearings, and I'll go into the dates and times and specifics on another slide, but please come testify at a public hearing. You can testify in person or virtually at any of our hearings. There will be 5 different hearings, 1 in each borough. No, attendance is not limited to residency or where you work or anything like that. We really want to hear from everyone at any hearing. So if you live in the Bronx, but you can't make the Bronx hearing for some reason, join us in Staten Island. You can come in person, you can come virtually, you join us in Manhattan, whatever fits best for your schedule. We're also asking that you email us testimony or send in a letter, written testimony, if that's, better for you, or that's how you'd rather tell your story, we're happy to accept it. And we're thrilled, in fact. And finally, District R, which I will explain a little bit more about later, but District R is an open source, free district drawing website. And the commission has worked with District R to create a specific city council layer that allows you to draw scientifically accurate districts to the dot, right? So that 172,882 number, District R, we've loaded all of the data that the commission is working with into District R. So you kind of get to be a commissioner, and you get to, take a stab at drawing your own maps and figuring out, what does it look like to really think about what are the boundaries of my community? Where does it start? Where does it end? How many people do I think from this side of town versus that side of town, right? Anything like that. So District R is an awesome tool. I really enjoy using it, and it helps you draw accurate districts. And I think also makes you really think differently about what does it mean to draw a district that accurately reflects my community. So a little bit about the timelines. The charter does provide certain timelines from the redistricting for the redistricting process, and it counts backwards essentially from the general election. There is some, leeway and wiggle room. Some things can be amended. And so because getting public input into the process is so important. And of course, there are laws, governing this whole process. And I'll explain a little bit more about the exact process, but basically the December 7th, 2022 date is the latest that this plan will be finalized by. So a little bit more about kind of the calendar, the process of where we're at. So the commission did 5 public hearings between May and July, and this was sort of a check-in, right? The lines that we're currently all living in, the district that the council member represents, those lines were drawn in 2012 and finalized, by early 2013. So it's a check-in, right? Like I said, we grew by 630,000 new people. We're now a city of 8.8 million people. So the point of those public hearings was to check in to say, hey, how's it going, right? How do your lines from 10 years ago serve you now? Are the communities that you were supposed to be drawn into these districts with, are they still there? Have they tripled in size, right? Have they all moved? It really a check-in to see how are things going, right? And, after those public hearings, we had over 170 people, my apologies, 170 people testify and receive over 500 pieces of input. And that input was instrumental for the commissioners as they got to work drawing our preliminary plan. The commission voted to release that preliminary plan on July 15th. And now it is available to the public for consumption, for review, to comment on. And so now we're in the second phase of public hearings. As the council member mentioned, we'll be beginning on Tuesday, August 16th. The times and dates are listed here. All of them except the Sunday hearing at Brooklyn at Medgar Evers College will be at 5:30 to 9 p.m. The one on Sunday will be from 3:30 to 7 p.m. And I'll be a broken record, but you can participate in any of these hearings, both in person or virtually via Zoom. We're very happy to have you however you'd like to join us, and attendance is not limited to residency or a connection to the borough. We just want to hear from you, right? And so after the second round of public hearings, the commissioners will get back to work. They'll revise the map that we published, and they will submit a map to the city council on September 22nd. And now you might be wondering what happens when they submit that map on September 22nd. So as I mentioned, we are right here. If you can see my cursor, we're right here at the second round of public hearings. And then, like I said, we'll have a public meeting, if the commission chooses to vote on this plan and, agrees with a quorum of 9 members, then we will submit the plan to the city council. The city council then has the chance to approve the plan. If they do nothing, that counts as an approval for us, or they can submit what is a formal objection, right? And if they formally object, the commission gets back to work. They revised our draft, they revised the maps. There's another round of public hearings, and then we submit a final plan to the city clerk. So that's what that December 7th date is looking at. That is kind of the latest we could see it going, given the timelines that are set forth by the city charter. Alternatively, if the city council does approve our plan, we submit these maps to the city clerk on September 22nd. And my understanding is then they become, the maps that council members will be running for in 2023. So a little bit about the resources, and this PowerPoint is available on our website, and I'll make sure to put the links for everything in the chat as well. But we really are asking people to look at the preliminary plan, to take, to really ask themselves, does the district that the commission has drawn me into for this draft map, does it serve me in my community? Is it accurate? Is it fair? Is it right? Is my community able to elect someone in this district fairly, right? And again, it's a starting point, not an ending point. It's not meant to be the end of the conversation. It's really meant to be the beginning. And what's cool is we're at this very crucial time where the commissioners' eyes and ears are fully open, right? They really want to hear from you, and they want to understand what you think about the preliminary maps, what you think about your current district, or if you have a map that we've never seen before, right? That we never thought of, send it over, and please, we want to hear from you. And so that's what District R is. Like I said, the commission has worked with District R, which is a really fantastic website, already fantastic, and we've added an extra special tool that allows you to draw mathematically accurate New York City Council districts. And there's demographic data, the same kind of data that the commission works with. You can use community board overlays and current city council lines to draw your own map. And one of my personal favorites is New York City Department of City Planning. They have these really great interactive census maps that go super granular by neighborhood. You can see demographic data, you can see demographic growth, demographic shrinkage. You could look by age, by housing. They have a lot of really cool stuff, and it really helps you understand the neighborhood that you live in. We're asking people to look at your current city council map, right? You might live in a district that you never realized is not very well drawn according to you and your community, right? So take a look at what's currently there, take a look at what we're proposing, and give us your thoughts. So like I said, I'll say it one more time. We're really hoping to get public testimony. We're hoping to have the public participate in this process. I can't, underscore enough how important it is for this process to accurately reflect New Yorkers. And we can only do that if you participate, right? And this will be the city council lines for the next 10 years. I think we all know that we have a lot of challenges ahead of us as a city for the next 10 years, exciting challenges. And so, help us make this the most representative and equitable process it can be. So with that, I will take questions.
Thank you so much, Miranda. As the council members said before, you can use the Q&A function to place your questions in the chat. So please go ahead and do that. Councilmember Dinowitz will be on to answer district-specific questions as well if people have those. So we'll give it a minute to get some questions in.
Yeah, I'll just put some links in the chat while I wait for some questions.
Great, thanks so much.
And I will just say for the hearings, we are asking for you to register, but it's not mandatory. We're just trying to get a sense of who will be there and how we can best anticipate these hearings going well. So the registration and all of the hearing information is on our website. So please head to there. I put the hearings page in the chat as well as a link to this presentation.
We do have a question from Ramona Jennings. She asked, how does redistricting impact rent increases?
I don't know that explicitly it does. Maybe the council member wants to answer that one, but as far as I understand, the two, while they are of course related, right, that is not within the purview of the commission. But that's the kind of thing that if you think, everyone on your block or neighborhood has experienced rent increases, and that is something that, is unique to your neighborhood, or maybe people think they're being forced out of their neighborhood because of rent increases. That's the kind of thing that's super important for the commission to know, because it could be something like, hey, we need this district to be drawn this way because a lot of us are facing the same economic hardship, and we need to be able to elect someone who will fight for us, right? And that's the kind of testimony that is really important to the commission.
Thank you so much. We have a few other questions. The next question is, can we see the preliminary map for District 11?
Yes, if you give me a second, I can pull that up for you. And I will also put the maps in the chat. Okay. Yeah.
And while she's doing that, I'll just make another, by the way, thank you, Miranda. Wonderful presentation, of course. And while she's doing that, I'll just make, of course, a plug for my newsletter and social media where this stuff, this information was all posted and sent out to the community. I encourage you all to sign up, and I see she put in the chat.
Let's see. I'm sorry, it's a lot of data, so it takes some time to load.
Yeah, so she put it in.
Yeah, maybe there's some other questions that I can answer while it's loading.
Yeah. So the next question is, how did the district change in 2012?
That's a great question. I spent a lot of time looking at the 2012 maps, but like in June, right before there were new maps to look at. But, I think it's interesting. One thing we don't talk a ton about specific districts, right? Just as a commission and staff. But one thing I will say is that, something about in the contiguity requirement, for example, right? So District 11, obviously the northwest corner of the Bronx, you're bound by the city limit, right? You're on the county line. And so overall districts that are at the edge of counties, there's less ways to go, if that makes sense, just by the geography that everyone's bound by.
Right. I think the question was, so yes, we are, I think it's a good point, something I've been telling constituents, we're kind of limited in where we can move. And I think that one of the, I think more to the question, are the maps from pre-2012 online, right? The 2012 maps are the current maps, but where would someone find the maps from the previous change?
My understanding is they're on our website still, but if they're not, we can certainly, I can talk to my team about maybe putting them up, but they should be available. I actually think they are, because I'm looking at final, I'm exploring our site now, because I know they used to be before we had our own districts. They actually are. I can share my screen once I find it.
One of the things about the website I want to add, and I said this in the intro, is about your submitting, not you, Miranda, the people watching tonight, submitting testimony. Because what you'll notice is that you go to Brooklyn, there's a whole list of people who submitted testimony. Queens, a whole list of people. Staten Island, a whole number of people, and advocacy organizations that submitted. And for the Bronx, there wasn't a ton of testimony. And what that means is that the commission knows more of what these other boroughs want. So again, that's why the education is so important. And again, that's why we're having a Bronx-wide information session next week. I think the 15th. So it's the night before or 2 nights before the Bronx Commission.
Yeah, exactly. I actually found the 2012 map if you want me to share it, or with its revive with like the project. I'll share my screen. I'll show you if that's helpful. I can share both. Okay. So this is District 11. And if you can see the key on the bottom, the dotted line is the 2003 plan, and the black line is the revised plan. So can everyone see?
Yeah. So I think, Miranda, as you said, there's not a lot of places to go in because we're surrounded by part of Manhattan, the Jersey, and Yonkers, or as I call it, upstate.
Right. Well, I mean, look, you look at assembly districts, state senate districts, congressional districts, the Bronx is used to sharing with those other counties. And so I just want to, remind people that this is only city limits, right? So, and I'm not saying that, nothing could change with the Bronx. I'm just saying that geography, of course, plays a role, right? And so, yeah, and so I actually have the other one right here. So can you see my screen still? So District 11. So this is the map. So the black line is the new proposed boundary. Oh, no, I'm sorry. The black line is the existing. Wait.
Proposed.
Hold on. The black is proposed and the pink is the existing, correct? Right. So I think if you can see, there we go. So I hope that's helpful. It obviously, the boundary goes a little bit further south and comes a little bit further west.
Okay.
Becomes more rectangular, if you will.
So here's a very, I think, in-depth specific question. So is the expectation that residents will testify, submit desired lines according to their needs or interests? And can you talk about what those interests could be? This one is, according to this person asking, is cyclist. It's hypothetical, but just, as a...
No, I like that question better than political party, right? So, right. So I think that's the kind of thing you can say, me and everyone on my block, we all cycle a lot, right? And we don't feel like, the way our district is drawn encompasses other people who cycle, but we know that there's a ton of people who cycle who live 5 blocks away, right? Like giving us helpful suggestions, I think as specific as you can be as possible. So, make a compelling case why cycling is something important enough to be taken into account with the redistricting process, right? It's called a community of shared interest in the city charter. And so it's kind of up to you to, play lawyer and convince the jury, right? Except the jury is the commissioners. And, include whatever you think is the most compelling evidence, right? And I also will say there's power in numbers, right? So if there really is, 300 cyclists on your, in your bid or on your block association or, in your community board, whatever it is, all 300 of them should tell us, right? There's power in numbers, and I think it's more compelling when it's true, when the commission and the commission staff are seeing the same sentiments echoed over and over and over by a certain community. It really helps to be believable that the problem is going on. And I think also, I would invite everyone to explore the city charter. The section on the redistricting commission is only a few pages and it's pretty clear and succinct. So, think about the criteria that the commission is bound by, beyond the Voting Rights Act and the 5% deviation, and look at the criteria that the commission is bound by and say, do my needs and wishes fit into this criteria? Is this compelling to people who are looking at this list and saying, here's our objective to draw districts that fit on this list?
And I think the question was really good about cyclists. It's communities of shared interests. A lot of the advocacy organizations and testimony that I've read use like racial and ethnic communities of interest, which is really important. But there are other interests. It includes economic interests. It includes type of housing, whether people are in houses or co-ops or they're renters. And, as Miranda said, maybe it includes cyclists.
Well, infrastructure, right, is an economic interest. And so I think that's, shared uses of transportation is something, right, whether it's a thoroughfare, right? So if you're saying, we're all cyclists and we need to have this district drawn this way because we need to elect a representative who is going to fight for bike lanes, right? Or who's going to fight for barriers on bike lanes. I'm not a cyclist, so I'm just winging it here. But, thinking about why do you need person? Why do you need that district drawn to help you elect a person that's going to fight for those interests, right? So again, tying it to the function of the city council, right? The city council obviously does do things like bike lanes and protections on bike lanes. So if the case is compelling enough, it's not crazy. So I think that's a great point. Communities of shared interest. It's about how compelling can you make that case that you do have a shared interest as a community.
Right. So we have one more question, and then we'll wrap it up. And this last question is about the Marble Hill houses. The Marble Hill houses, for those of you who don't know, is a NYCHA development in Marble Hill. The interesting thing is that politically, part of those houses are in Manhattan. Even though it's in the Bronx mainland, that area is considered politically Manhattan. As it is now, the Marble Hill houses are represented by 3 council members: Carmen De La Rosa in the 10th district, Pierina Sanchez in the 14th district, and me, 11th district. I represent one of the buildings, and the rest are split between Carmen De La Rosa and Pierina Sanchez. So there are a few issues. One is, we've heard a lot about 3 council members for one development. The minimum number it can be, because of what Miranda mentioned before about the lines only being able to go between the same boroughs once, is that Marble Hill houses at minimum have to have 2 council members. And in the preliminary lines, they districted the Bronx section of Marble Hill, the Marble Hill houses, into the 11th district, and they districted the rest, and they kept them in Carmen De La Rosa's district, because in Diana Ayala's district, the 8th district, that's the district that crosses from Manhattan to the Bronx. So because of the charter and because of the political lines that determine where Manhattan and the Bronx are, that's part of the reason why there's such a mess with or maybe not mess, but there's the split between the Marble Hill houses in terms of 2 different, or 3 in this case as it currently stands, council members. Again, if that is an issue, I think it's very reasonable to say a community of interest is a NYCHA development, is neighbors literally in the same complex who have the same tenants association. So all of the Bronx buildings should be in one district. I think that's, not a lawyer, but it sounds completely appropriate to me to call that a community of shared interests.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Miranda.
No, I just think, we've heard a varying chorus of opinions on the preliminary maps, right? So, if you think we got something right, tell us, because it could also be up for grabs if no one says they like something on these maps, right? So if you think we got something right, tell us. If you think we got one block right, if you got one block wrong, you got to tell us. And I think, being as specific as possible, right? The Marble Hill situation, if you will, is incredibly unique. I think most people living in New York City are probably not aware that there is a tiny piece of Manhattan that is fused to the Bronx and has a very interesting history, and you literally are in a park and you are crossing county lines and you might not even know it, right? And so I think that we need to hear if you like something in the preliminary maps, great, right? If you don't like something, also great. Just tell us and be as specific as possible. I will say that I've watched a lot of commissioners ask, can you tell us this exact street that you're talking about, right? And as crazy as it sounds, you're the experts in your communities, right? So if you're saying, I want it to go from, Riverdale to Norwood, okay, well, what's the boundary? If you have to have a boundary, I don't think any of us want to have dividing lines between each other, but if you have to, where's the best place? Because we're talking about an incredibly dense city, right? So only a few blocks could be thousands of people. So we need to know where you want those lines to be. So I think the Marble Hill example is really interesting because we're bound by, communities of interest as well as the charter criteria and things like that. So it's a fascinating situation.
Thank you. And with that, I think we can wrap it up. I know there are probably more unanswered questions. Maybe you're watching on Facebook and you don't have the Zoom Q&A function. Maybe you're watching on BronxNet. I want everyone watching to know they can always reach out to my office. The email address of my office is dinowitz@council.nyc.gov. It's dinowitz@council.nyc.gov. You can call the office at 718-549-7300. Again, 549-7300, area code 718. I encourage you all to follow me on social media. It's at Eric Dinowitz NYC, Eric Dinowitz NYC. And you can also sign up for my newsletter, ericdinowitz.nyc/newsletter, to stay up to date on all this. Again, we will be having one more of these. The goal next week on the 15th is to ensure that it's translated into some of the most common languages we see here in the Bronx. It is sponsored by the entire Bronx Council delegation, including myself and my co-chair of the Bronx delegation, Althea Stevens. It will be, I believe, in Spanish, Bengali, and a few other languages we're trying to still work out. So it's going to be accessible to a lot more people. And lastly, again, I just want to thank Miranda for the wonderful presentation, for the work you're doing really for our city and for our community, your home community, and the commission, BronxNet, for being a community partner. And again, my chief of staff, Jenna, who really takes care of a lot of the local things in the office. Very often you'll see her at community events, you'll be calling the office, you'll be in touch with her, and who really arranged this whole education forum this evening and is doing the one next week. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining. Hope you learned something, and I hope you come out and testify and make your voices heard.
Yes, I put all the links for our stuff in the chat. So this presentation is available. Send us your testimony to the email in the chat. And if you would like this presentation to come to another community group that you're a part of, email us. We're doing our best to, spread ourselves throughout the city that is so wide and diverse that we love so much. So, all right. Thank you so much, Councilmember.
Good night.